Central Bank of Nigeria earlier today announcing the postponement of its highly anticipated Monetary Policy Committee meeting, originally scheduled for Monday and Tuesday, September the 25th and the 26th. Dr. Isa Abdul Mumin, Director of Corporate Communications at the CBN, disclosed this in a press release issued. Now, the statement did not say the reason of postponing it, but claimed the new date will be communicated in due course. And the gentleman on your screen is nominated by President Tinubu. That's Mr. Dr. Olayemi Michael Cardozo, who was to assume the role of the governor of the central bank, of course, pending confirmation from the Senate. So joining us, as I just said, to discuss further, Group Chief Executive Officer, Cowry Asset Management, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, joins us to discuss. Good evening, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. What is your reaction to this postponement of the MPC meeting that was supposed to take place next week?
Good evening, Lotus, and thank you for having me. The postponement did not come as a surprise to me because if you consider the fact that if you look at the constitution of the Monetary Policy Committee and you recognize the central bank governor and the deputy governor of the central bank are components or members of the Monetary Policy Committee, you have 2 or 3 persons nominated by the central bank governor. You have about 3 nominated by the president. So if you consider the composition of the Monetary Policy Committee, you realize that they were not likely going to have a very effective deliberation and decision without the central bank governor, given that the president has nominated a new central bank governor and 4 deputy governors for the central bank. And those 5 of them, none of the 5 of them has gone through clearance from the National Assembly because the National Assembly has not even resumed sitting. And again, consider the fact that the current deputy governor of the central bank have not resigned. The current governor who is in suspension has not resigned. So you really cannot have the Monetary Policy Committee was not likely going to form a quorum. And if they're not going to form a quorum, then there was no point for them to try to sit. And that for me was the appropriate thing to do was to suspend or postpone that meeting until you have some clarity on the governance level or the governance structure of the central bank.
Do you think this period of time will, I mean, they'll tell us when this meeting will take place, but do you think it will be done expeditiously in order to try to meet up with time frame?
Well, there are a couple of legal bottlenecks involved that have to be lifted or addressed. One is that the central bank governor is a tenured job. And the central bank governor's appointment and the deputy governor's appointment, the deputy governor of the central bank are occupying that position by status. So which means that you have to get them to resign or you have to get the National Assembly to fire them since none of them have been declared of unstable mental health. So if they are not of unstable mental health and they have not resigned, the option you have is to get this National Assembly to have justification to fire them. So if that doesn't happen, then the process of the National Assembly clearing the newly nominated central bank governor and deputy governors may not take place. So you have to cross those legal hurdles. And I don't know how expeditiously they will do that. I think the National Assembly will reconvene next week, resuming from their summer vacation next week. We're going to see what will happen. But these 2 things, the first thing is to create the vacancies in those positions. And then subsequently, clear people to occupy those positions. Let's see how quickly those things will happen. That's why I say a lot of things are clouded in political considerations. And you need to address those issues because we can say, how expeditiously will this, the newly nominated board of the central bank or governors board of the central bank assume office?
Great stuff. So, I mean, you have a deep understanding of how these matters work and you are educating and informing our viewers. What signal, though, does this send to investors, global markets and others? Do you think they have an understanding of this process? Why do you think they will be interpreting this?
Yeah, Rotus, the signals are not positive. They are very... they are negative. Let me not use the word very, very, because that will further add into the adjective that it's already negative. They are negative signals. In the first place, there are a lot of uncertainty about the Nigerian economy. The Nigerian economy has continued to deteriorate over time. Let's look at the major issues. You look at the price level, we've seen inflation rate continue to go up. We are talking inflation of about 25.8% for the month of August. Then you look at the exchange rate. This evening, the exchange rate is approaching 1,000 naira to a dollar. Then you look at the reserve has continued to depreciate or decline. Then you look at crude production. Crude production has remained unstable. If you look at the crude production level, which is actually a critical component of stabilizing the exchange rate, you realize that in May, the crude production level was about 1.19 million barrels a day, moved to 1.26 million barrels in June. So at that time, when we saw the figure of 1.26 million barrels in June, we thought, well, with the change in governance or in government, we're going to see an improvement, only for it to go down in July to 1.09 million barrels a day and move on marginally in August to 1.18 million barrels a day. So the critical foreign exchange earning source of the country has remained depressed. And at this point, we're also not seeing foreign portfolio investors coming to the country. We're talking of arrears of unmet remittances to the airlines about over $700 million. Of course, I don't want to go into the issue about the Dubai, United Arab Emirates. But the issue is that you've not cleared arrears of unmet demand of foreign exchange. And I've said this severally in your program, that unless you restore liquidity in the foreign exchange market and to restore liquidity, you have to clear the areas of unmet demand. And then you have stability in exchange rate. You're not going to see foreign portfolio investors. So until you achieve those things, you're not seeing foreign portfolio investors. And therefore, that's why our currency has continued to be under pressure. So there are too many uncertainties about the economy that the uncertainty around the central bank only exacerbates the problems. Because right now you don't have governance level at the central bank level. The central bank governor is in detention. We understand one of the deputy governors is in detention. The other deputy governor is visiting the one of the security agencies, DSS, frequently. And then government has announced a new set of board members, executive members of the central bank, without addressing the tenure of the existing members. So these things all add to uncertainty around the economy. The optic is not positive.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. So with that in mind, if assuming this gets cleared up and we go forward with our MPC meetings, there's only one policy meeting, I guess, left for 2023. What's your outlook on that? Considering all the things you've laid out, I mean, it looks like the central CBN only has just one or two tools that it can use for its side of the monetary policy equation. So how do you see that working out?
One of the things we must recognize is that the central bank monetary policy tools have been weakened by the structural challenges in the economy. So the options available to the central bank are very limited. In the first place, I have said this repeatedly, that the use of interest rates will not address inflation pressure in the country, because inflation pressure is not driven by excess credit expansion. It's driven by shortfall in supply, particularly food items. So we need to address the key challenge we have to face, with the Monetary Policy Committee was faced, is that the challenges we have in the economy of addressing price stability is not going to be coming from monetary policies. Take, for instance, the major price stability. The Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee is supposed to manage exchange rate stability, inflation rate stability, and then interest rate stability. Those three components are what the Monetary Policy Committee's decisions are supposed to address. Let's take, for instance, the exchange rate improvement or stability. It can only come if you have improvement in your export earnings. It's not really going to come from foreign portfolio investment unless you address the issue of clean areas of unmet demand or foreign portfolio investors who have sold their Naira assets and are unable to remit their funds. And then you clear the areas of letters of credit that have been due for negotiation, have not been negotiated, and you clear the areas of the airlines. That is not going to come from the Monetary Policy Committee. The other aspect on price stability is inflation rate. The inflation pressure we're facing today is coming from, like I said, supply bottleneck. And the critical supply bottleneck that we have is that of food production. Food production will only be addressed if we address the issue of insecurity, particularly the food base of the country, which is the northern regions of the country. That will come the fiscal authorities. So, interest rate is neither here nor there. If you increase the interest rate today, you're not going to attract foreign portfolio investors. You're going to hurt the economy further. So I think we need to realize that the Monetary Policy Committee have limited tools to address the challenges we have in the country. And therefore, the appropriate thing that we should see if they are able to meet in November will likely be to maintain current market rates. We saw an increase of 25 basis points from 18.5% at the last meeting to 18.75%. It did not have any effect on the inflation rate. Inflation moved to 24% in July and moved to 25.8% in August. So it's not addressing it. So, and we must not stifle further productive activity in the course of trying to moderate inflation pressure.
Thank you so much for that. Can you speak to why the stability of the CBN as an institution is crucial for Nigeria and the economy? What the role it plays?
Well, the stability of the central bank is very critical to Nigerian economy, just like it is critical to every economy because of the role that central bank plays. I just mentioned the role of the central bank in terms of maintaining price stability, the three components of price: inflation rate, exchange rate, interest rate. It is the central bank's duty. But beyond that, the central bank also has the duty to maintain financial system stability. And the financial system is the allocator of economic resources. So you need to have a very vibrant, very effective central bank to ensure that you have effective intermediation process in your economy so that the surplus units will provide funding to the deficit unit, who are the productive units of the economy. And that's the only way the economy works, because if the deficit unit are productive sector of the economy are unable to access funding or access funding at a relatively good cost, they are not able to produce. Without production, you're not going to have improvement in unemployment level, or you are not going to have a better improvement, you're not going to have productivity, you're not going to have a growth of the GDP. So central bank is very critical in resource allocation because they sit at the epicenter of intermediation role.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I want to get your take on the president's trip to New York. A lot of chief executives are there. You are a chief executive. In fact, the last time we spoke to you, you were in New York. What do you make of what you've seen so far?
Well, I think the president and his team are doing what they should do. They should be the salespersons of the country, or the biggest salespersons of the country. But we also need to come back home and do the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting is to create an environment, to create economic framework, to create an economic environment that will attract investors. You are seeing countries, the other day somebody was telling me that one of the world leaders, economic leaders of one of the big conglomerates flew into Vietnam to go and negotiate with the Vietnamese government for them to allow them to set up in that country. If you create the environment right, the investors will come. If you go cap in hand, go to the investors to beg them to come to your country, and your economic environment is not conducive, you're not attractive, not providing attractive yield, then they are not going to come. So beyond appealing to them and telling them you have a good environment, you must actually have a good environment. It's beyond a salesman job. It has to be the job of a man who is a mechanic who will fold his sleeves and get the tools tightened, get the screws tightened to get the economy working. And that's what I think the leadership of the economy must recognize, that we must get our environment appropriately attractive to investors so that investors will on their own come to us. So that when we go to now sell to them, they will come to us just the way bees are attracted to honey.
Fantastic. Seeing the president at the NASDAQ, ringing the bell and so on, it made me think of the NGX. What's your outlook for attracting more IPOs on the NGX in the future?
Well, if we have to look at the fundamental thing that will attract more IPO to the Nigerian exchange, is for us to streamline the economy. When I mean to formalize the economy. Today, our economy is still largely an informal economy. We need to take measures to formalize several sectors of the economy. If you look at the economy, for instance, and look at the major sectors of the economy, agriculture accounts for almost 23% of the GDP. Agriculture, only about 2 companies are listed. Look at manufacturing, how many companies are listed? The manufacturing accounts for about 9% of the GDP. Telecommunication sector, only MT and Airtel are listed. Of course, that accounts for another 16% of the GDP. Trade sector accounts for about 15% of the GDP. No trade operator, no company in the trade sector is listed today. So in construction industry, how many are listed? About 4% of the GDP. So we must have a buzz that represents, in terms of structure, the sectors of the economy. And that will come from when we begin to formalize the economy. And that's the real difference between us and South Africa. Because in South Africa, even agricultural activities are formalized. So the longer term factor that will drive listing and growth in terms of the depth of the exchange will be the formalization of the economy.
Mr. Johnson Chukwu, Group Chief Executive Officer, Cowry Asset Management. It's always a pleasure speaking with you about these matters. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.